Hello, BookTube, and we're back with 28 Days of Science Fiction with Day 21, Shelf 21. Now, I think, well, no, I'm seeing flickering again. I thought I had sort of fixed the lighting, but I don't know. It's just not working. Uh, but yeah, well, we'll just sort of soldier on, I suppose. This shelf, just over half or about half of it goes back to nonfiction. They're large books that were too big to put on the regular shelves, so there's a little more space on the bottom shelves, and they're heavy books as well, so that helps with the shelves themselves. And this time it's mostly, or well, all but one is a is biographical material of science fiction and, well, supernatural authors. Well, that's what we'll see in the first set here. Now, this is a supernatural fiction writers, fantasy and horror by E.F. Blyer is the editor. And this is a fabulous collection of little biographical essays on a lot of authors. Edited, as I said, by Blyer, and we've come across him before with some bibliographies and other items. And this is Scribers and Suns, published 1985. This is an ex-library copy, but it's not a bad one. It was I bought it as a set, and we'll see that this one has a dust jacket. The other one doesn't, and it's from a different library. So I don't know what they did, but anyway. This is Volume 1, Apollonius to Mary Sinclair. And it has, well, huge editorial staff here. And it is, they're little biographical essays, as I say, by various authors. Some, like, there's Theophile Gautier by Brian M. Stableford, Michael Derda, Honor de Balzac, and it just goes on. There's a huge amount, but it starts out with, Apollonius, and then Arthurian romances, the Arabian Nights. E.F. Blyer does that essay. And it just goes all the way through. This is... let's see, British Victorian writers. We got William Harrison Ainsworth, Edward George Buller Lytton, G.W.M. Reynolds, Charles Dickens, Le Fanu, Wilkie Collins, George MacDonald, Lewis Carroll, Amelia P. Edwards, Mrs. Oliphant, Mrs. J.H. Riddell, Mrs. Henry Wood, and it just goes through. And then the British Findical writers, H. Rider Haggard, Henry James, Oscar Wilde, Arthur Machen, M.P. Shield, Bram Stoker, Arthur Quiller Couch, H.G. Wells. And then British early 20th century writers, J.M. Barrie, also by Brian M. Stableford, Robert Hitchens, Brian M. Stableford again, William Hope Hodgson by E.F. Blyer, Barry Payne by John Clute, who we've seen, J.D. Beresford by Brian M. Stableford, John Clute again with Walter de la Mare. So so it's a biographical book of supernatural writers. And Volume 2, as I say, it doesn't have a jacket, but it's from a different library, but it came very cheaply as ex-library copy. And this is A.E. Coppard to Roger Zelazny. Also, this is fantasy and horror. The first one, give a subtitle. This is fantasy and horror authors. And it's the same deal. It's a bit thicker, I think. And it doesn't actually have a contents page for some reason. I didn't notice that before. But anyway, it's the British writers of the interbellum period. So we got A. Coppard, where it stars Edgar Allan Poe, Washington Irving, Sarban, C.S. Lewis, T.H. White, Mervyn Wall, L.P. Hartley, Charles Williams, H. Russell Wakefield, Harlan Ellison, Peter S. Beagle, Piers Anthony. This is British and American modern writers. Manly Wade Wellman, L. Sprague de Camp, and Fletcher Pratt. My brain is not engaging too well today. Ray Bradbury, Lee Brackett, C.L. Moore, Clark Ashton Smith, Talbot Munday, and so on. Very, very useful. And he is also, Blyer, had also done science fiction writers. This is a Scribner's Writers series. This is an ex-library as well. Discarded from Fulton Library. Do not circulate. Well, I bought it. It was when I ordered it, it said it was brand new and did not say anything about ex-libraries. Well, it's not brand new because it's ex-library. So, published in 1999 by Charles Scribner's, and it goes through... this is the second edition, actually. Brian Aldiss, Paul Anderson, Isaac Asimov, all the way through Greg Bear, Octavia Butler, I'm just skipping down, Carl Capek, Arthur C. Clarke, Hal Clement, Gordon R. Dixon, Harlan Ellison, Philip Jose Farmer, H. Rider Haggard, Stanislaw Lem, Edgar Allan Poe, Frederick Pohl, Christopher Priest, Kim Stanley Robinson, Robert Silver, Clifford D. Simak, of course, E.E. Doc Smith, Olaf Stapledon, Bruce Sterling, and it ends, with Roger Zelazny. And it's a several pages, usually like a biographical essay on the author. Here's Michael Moorcock, and then they've got selected bibliography at the end, pictures like Walter Miller Jr., and these also add some critical appraisal as well to their work, as well as the previous volume. And it's a critical appraisal from authors that wrote these that I can trust, or for the most part, because I'm aware of their other writings, or a lot of the other writings. Unlike the internet, where it's Joe Blow that gives a critical opinion, and I don't know who they are, and I don't really care, to be honest, because everybody has an opinion on something, but sometimes it's not informed opinions. That's the problem. But there are some that are, but the problem is to sort of weed my way through all that. It's very difficult. So therefore, I love going to specific volumes and authors that I know that I can trust, and even trust sometimes to be wrong at times, or not wrong per se, but different opinions and ideas that I have, and I differ with sometimes their conclusions, but I still warrant and understand and appreciate their scholarship. Now we continue on with something very similar. This is a very, very rough ex-library copy of, this is from the George Washington University Garland Library, according to that. This is edited by Curtis C. Smith. It's 20th Century Science Fiction Writers, St. Martin's Press, 1991. And it's on the same vein, but usually a lot smaller entries, shorter entries, but it does give a bibliography, and it does give some critical apparatus to their writing as a whole, or sometimes specific books. But this is the type of thing, like it's got bibliography at the end of the entries, sometimes like critical material that's been written about the author as well. And as I say, it's very short entries, but they're very useful as well. As I say, the author is pretty good. Now I've got this. See, this is just, it's just a plasticized vinyl covering that just falls apart. And they did a second edition, which I have here. It's smaller, not as tall. And this is St. James Press, Chicago and London. Second edition by Curtis C. Smith, editor. And it's on the same lines. It's a little cleaner in look and style, even though the font is probably a little smaller. But it's the same sort of crappy plasticide cover, but it's not falling apart like the other one. And I haven't actually had a chance to compare the two volumes and see what the difference is between the two, because it's second edition, which I will do at some point. But I'm loath to throw away or get rid of the first edition because there might be authors that are either longer entries in the first edition and shorter in the second, or omitted completely from the second edition, and that happens at times. Now we continue on with biographical material. This is a series, I don't know how many hundreds of volumes they're up to now, but Dictionary of Literary Biography. This is volume 8, 20th Century American Science Fiction Writers. And you can see it was ex-library, and the glue is still some residue glue, taking that off. And the end papers are black and white copies of the beginning of covers of magazines. This is published Gale Research Company, a Brucali Clark book, edited by David Cowart, University of South Carolina, and Thomas L. Weimer, Bowling Green State University, forward by Thomas M. Dish, who was a science fiction writer in his own right, and wrote quite a bit about nonfiction about science fiction, which is very interesting as well. This is early on in the series, but they do all sorts of volumes, like the American Renaissance in New England, American novelists since World War II, antebellum writers in New York in the South, and so on. 20th Century American dramatist, 2 volumes, and then this the 20th Century American Science Fiction Writers in 2 volumes. And it's similar to the other ones, that they're biographical essays written by specific authors and put together. Like we've got Poul Anderson. At the time this was written, he was still alive. A lot of these authors were still alive when this volume came out, or a number of them were. Got Alfred Bester, Isaac Asimov by Stephen H. Goldman, Lee Brackett by Alex Bateman, Ray Bradbury by Gary K. Wolfe, who's famous science fiction academic, but has written a lot of really cool stuff, and his reviews are really good as well. Edgar Rice Burroughs, Aldous Budrys. It just goes on. Samuel R. Delany, Lester Del Rey. A lot of these authors of these I'm not familiar with. Or some of them I am, but they are academics, and there are I think there is a brief biographical sketch of the authors as well. We've got Keith Laumer, and then we end up with Jack London in this volume. Edmund Hamilton, we had Lee Brackett, James E. Gunn. Just an overview again of their work. There's John W. Campbell. Just opened it up, and it's a number of pages. And then we've got periodical publications and so forth. Astounding Science Fiction Anthology. Yeah, just, they list a lot of the edited books by John W. Campbell. And then we go on to Harry Clement Stubbs. At this time, he was still alive. And at the beginning, they list the books, a selected list of books. Like, here we go with John W. Campbell and the list there. So, and volume 2 is very much in the same vein. It's out of order here. This is volume 2. Volume 2. 20th Century Authors M to Z. So this, and then also the same Endpapers, or same style of Endpapers. And edited by David Cowarts and Thomas L. Weimer. And this starts out with John D. MacDonald, Edgar Pagborn, Alexei Panshin, Clifford Simak. He was still alive when this was written. And that's by Thomas D. Clarison, which is not surprising. Gary K. Wolfe and Carol T. Williams has done Cordwainer Smith, Paul Marion, Anthony Linebarger, whose his real name was. James Cheptree Jr., Alice B. Sheldon, still alive at this time. Jack Vance, still alive at this time. A.E. Van Vogt, by Arthur Gene Cox. I don't think I've read that one. I'm going to have to go back to that one. But yeah, there's trends in science fiction, the new wave, science fantasy, just other essays. So it's these are very, very fun volumes. They are expensive to buy in sort of non-X-Library editions. And I've been able to get most of them. There's still about 2 or maybe 3 of these volumes, science fiction ones, that I don't have, but they go up, like this is volume 251. This is Canadian Fantasy and Science Fiction Writers. So it's a newer volume, so it cleaned up better because the stickers hadn't been on there that long. And there's a list of them. There's 1 page, 2 and 3 pages. It just goes on like any ones, and then you got documentary series. It's amazing, this whole set of books. But this is Canadian Fantasy, edited by Douglas Iveson, University of Western Ontario. This was published as the Gale Group, published in 2002. Now, it has a lot of authors that I've never actually heard of, to be honest, and that's why it's very useful. But they don't always. It doesn't mean that they were born there, but there's a claim because Judith Merrill is in here. She wasn't born in Canada, as far as I'm aware. But there's a lot of other writers like Leslie Gadala, 1939, still alive. William Gibson, I knew. But yeah, a lot of authors that I am not aware of, especially some of the early authors, which I might have read something in the magazines if they published in the pulps, but never knew that they were Canadian, and their names have long disappeared in my mind. Lawrence Manning, Teresa Plowright, Daniel Serene, Sean Stewart, S.M. Sterling, and A.E. Van Vogt, which I'd known. Let me see, do they have Gordon R. Dixon in here? They don't have Gordon R. Dixon in here. Strangely, he was born in Canada. And it's the same type, but here we go. We actually have a corrected typescript for maybe that was filler, because I don't know if there's that many Canadian authors, but it's got covers, Guy Gabriel K. It's part of the same series, and very useful biographical, because, as I say, some of these authors I'm not aware of, so I was really glad to get that. This is British Fantasy and Science Fiction Writers since 1960. I think there's 2 earlier volumes to this, which I don't have yet. And this is from the CFCC Library. Who are they when they're at home? And it's volume 261 of this Dictionary of Literary Biography. Library of Cape Fear Community College, Washington, North Carolina. Or Wilmington, North Carolina. This is 2002. So yeah, so it's exactly what it says on the tin. And it's all the authors, and most of them are still alive. Or these are from writing from, I think, from 1960 onwards. So, and M. John Harrison. It's just, yeah, it's the same format, biographical essay with a list of their books and other critical material. And there is some critical appraisal of the authors as well. Now, the last book of the nonfiction on this shelf is short story criticism. Not particularly science fiction-y, but there is some science fiction in here, if I remember correctly. Excerpts from criticism, works of short fiction writers. Gale Research Incorporated again. It's a multi-volume series. Looking for a date here. 1994. So we've got Isaac Babel, Samuel Beckett, T. Corrigan and Boyle, Guy Davenport, Stephen Dixon, M.R. James, Thomas Ligotti, Leonard Michaels, Jane Ann Phillips, and Nathaniel West. I think I got this, yeah, now I'm looking at this because of the M.R. James criticism that's in here. And it's excerpts and sometimes full criticism, but usually excerpts of the criticism of the author of short fiction. Now, we move on to fiction. The first volume I have here, I've never read. This was sent to me that I can't think of who, but it's Gary Kilworth in Solitary. It's very short. Kind of a cool cover. It is Faber and Faber, published in 1977. Never heard of it, and nor have I heard of the author. It says, Earth has been under alien domination for centuries. Humans are isolated from each other by the laws of their masters. Only Cave, a human raised amongst the alien soul, has any liking for the conqueror race, or at any rate for some of them. Now, yeah, so in jacket design, it says by Dave Griffiths. I don't know this at all. It's very short. It's just over 100 pages, so it might be something worth reading. If anybody's read this and can let me know what if it's any good, then I might bump it up. If curious. Now, we've got ones that are. This is an omnibus of Tom Swift, the first 3 books by Victor Appleton. This is Tom Swift and his motorcycle, or Fun and Adventures on the Road. Book 2, Tom Swift and his motorboat, or The Rivals of Lake Carlopa. Book 3, Tom Swift and his airship, or The Stirring Cruise of the Red Cloud. These are, I think, the original series. It's children's sort of science fiction. I think these might be the first series, because it was reintroduced later. But off the top of my head, I can't remember. So if anybody does know, I can easily look this up, and I've forgotten. But Tom Swift and his submarine boat, Tom Swift and his electric runabout, Tom Swift and his wireless message. So there's 6 of them there. I don't know how many were done and as reprints, but there you go. Now, here's an interesting publisher that was started by by Sam Moskowitz. They're kind of ugly, but they reprinted some fabulous old science fiction. And it's classics of science fiction by Hyperion Press. But they came as, well, very durable, cloth-bound, sewn books. And, but as I say, not the best looking. Now, we've got The Life and Adventures of Peter Wilkins by Robert Patlock, illustrated by Edward Bodden. Now, this was originally published in 1928, and the Hyperion reprint edition is 1974. And I picked this up because it's sort of, some of these are, proto-science fiction, so before science fiction, but since it's 1928, it's not so much. I don't think I've ever read this, but I like Edward Bodden as a illustrator as well. A lot of his artwork, collection of his books and so forth is in Bedford in the Cecil Higgins Art Museum. And, he did a lot of stuff in lino cut as well. And this is Columbus of Space, but again, just very, very plain and somewhat ugly to a certain extent. By Garrett P. Service, with the new introduction by Langley Searless. It's Hyperion Press, originally 1894, and this is copyright 1974, Hyperion reprint. Again, just a good solid publications, but not the best looking. Now, not sure how that happened, but again, parallels of a big crease down the back cover, which wasn't there. Now, this is the Coming of Conan, the Cimmerian, Robert E. Howard's. This is the collection that was put out of all the original material by Del Rey Books. And this was, Random House. Del Rey is owned by Random House. Illustrated by Mark Schultz, and this was published in 2003. There was a hardcover edition, which is hard to find now. Great cover art on there. And yeah, it's the original stories of Conan. And I remember reading Conan when I was younger, during the 80s, but I probably read the Lynn Carter, Elsbrag de Camp expanded ones. And I remember enjoying them, thinking they were okay. So for, I think, February Fantasy Month, FFS, one year, I decided to get this volume and read me some Conan, the original Conan. And yeah, they're not really to my liking, to be honest. I understand their importance in the field of sword and sorcery or, fantasy, but yeah, they're not quite to my liking. They're not horrible, but it's like I would maybe dip into this every so often. I got to, however many, 121 pages in here, and that's where I sort of ended. So I may pick it up again sometime, but I'm in no rush to get the other volumes, to be honest. Something that's more interesting to me to read is this here, Tsar Wars Episode 2, Siren of the Skies by George Griffith. I only have Volume 2, The Empire Strikes Back, The Force, and the Death Star, written in 1893. And this is edited by Marcus L. Rowland. Let's see here. It's by Heliograph Incorporated. Originally published as Olga Romanoff and the Siren of the Skies by Tower Publishing in 1894. And I don't have a date that I could see for, oh no, 2003 for the heliograph printing. And this is what it says on the back here. Our empire is not bounded by the roofs of subterranean caverns, but only by its limits of the planet's atmosphere. We can soar beyond the clouds and dive beneath the seas. We have realized what he called the vril force as a sober scientific fact. And if I thought that you, for instance, were my enemy, I could strike you dead without as much as laying a hand on you. It was originally published under the title, and this publication includes the complete original text and illustrations. Not the best of reproduction of illustrations, but there you go. But this is part 2, so I need to get part 1 before I can actually dip in to read it. And this is another sort of older science fiction, The Crystal City Under the Sea by Andre Laurie. Nice designed cover here. Was given to someone in 1942. Oh, jeez. Translated from the French by Andre Laurie. That's, because it's not the author. L.A. Smith. And this was published, it is in late 1800s, I believe. It's literally a sort of a lost civilization type thing, a city under the sea. Early material, and let's grab 2 here to do it once. The Scarlet Plague by Jack London. Yes, Jack London did write sort of science fiction-y, proto-science fiction. This is the year is 2073. An uncontrollable disease has wiped out most of the world's people 6 decades earlier. The cities are destroyed. An old man, James Howard Smith, wanders the depopulated land with his 3 grandsons. They are hunter-gatherers now, but Smith still remembers the arrival of the plague, the fear, the sudden deaths, the fires, the fighting and looting, and he remembers the world before the pandemic, the days of culture and plentiful food. He tries to tell his story to his grandsons, but the 3 boys can scarcely comprehend his tale of the destruction of a world long gone. Originally published in 1912, Jack London's dystopian novella, Scarlet Plague, is an eerily prescient book and a timely warning about the fragility of civilization. And this is reprinted by Spinebill Press in 2020. And it's very short. It's like 70 pages long. Here's one. I was trying to remember the name of it on some live I think I was doing, but I remembered the name, but I couldn't remember the author. The Man in the Moon, being the story of the 17th century voyage to the moon and its inhabitants, by Francis Godwin, Bishop of Hereford, 1617 to 1633, with a modern introduction. So this is a nice little reprint of this. And I picked this up from a Remainder company, I believe. Langston Press, 1996. But it's Domingo Gonzalez was apparently the author, so a fictitious author of The Speedy Messenger. And it talks about the trip to the moon and its civilization. So this is definitely proto-science fiction. And it was written 1638. So it's a bit old, but it's very cool. And I do love the cover, and as you can see there, that'll give you an idea of what he uses to get to the moon. And here we go. The Martian by The Martian by, I can't remember his name. George du Maurier. Daphne du Maurier's, is it grandfather, I think it is? The Martian. This was published in 1898, I think it says there in Roman numerals. It's got a bit of some water damage on it. Damp stained water damage. It's not too bad of water damage. It's more damp staining than anything. And it's kind of science fiction because a character winds up being from Mars. George du Maurier is better known for his, what is it, Trilby? Is that the title I'm thinking of? But yeah, this is quite cool as, again, a proto sort of science fiction-y type thing, philosophical, religious as well. Now, the last books, I had mentioned these when on the very first video I did, and we're finally getting to them. I mentioned them in relation to Lester Del Rey's The World of Science Fiction, A History of Subcultures, 1926 to 1976. And there are 45 volumes that were sort of a companion collection that was put together to represent the best, or the period and influential works. Now I've got 3 of them here. Again, they're like the Hyperions. They're small, but no dust jacket to them at all. Now this is it's basically, well, it's published by Garland and Company, but Ace Publisher, Ace Books, I think, as the original for this, and this is 1975. It's the Garland Library of Science Fiction, a collection of 45 works of science fiction selected by Lester Del Rey with a separate introductory volume, Science Fiction 1926 to 1976, written by him especially for this series. Now, these are Charles Fort, that got 14 times. And this was originally written in 1941, or 1931 and 1941. It's got 2 dates, and this is Low. And it's basically 3, actually they did 4 volumes of Charles Fort. This is New Lands, originally published in 1923, and then, so yeah, I think it says 1941, so those are reprinted then. And Ace Printing, 1968 and 73. And these are sort of library editions, obviously. Doesn't give me a year for this one, I don't think. 70s, definitely. 75, 76. But yeah, it's basically a lot of material that has been used for the basis of a lot of science fiction throughout the 20th century. And this is 1975 as well. This is The Wild Talents by Charles Fort. I've not read these in total. I've read excerpts, and always it crops up in histories of science fiction in the 20th century of authors, pulling up, getting ideas from Charles Fort's writings. And so we got 3 of the 4 volumes here. So again, this is the end of day 21, and next will be all fiction from now on. There will be a lot of anthologies and other novels. Thank you, BookTube.